Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall tonight. So glad you could join us. Hope you stay on for the whole hour we're going to be on. If you have a question, by all means, please press 0. 0 on the keypad on your phone, 0, and we'll get to your question and we'll queue it up as soon as we can. If the council member will be on first, and we have a couple special guests on as well. Like I said, we hope you can stay on the call, and we hope you got some questions. And if you do, by all means, still press 0 on the keypad on your phone, and we'll get your question queued up as fast as we can. We're also collecting email addresses, so if you want to provide us your email address so we can send you updates, especially during these trying times, press 7 on the keypad on your phone if you wouldn't mind for that. I'm going to say this a couple more times, and then I'm going to hand it off to the council member. Again, welcome everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you have a question, we hope you have a question, press 0 on the keypad on your phone, 0 if you have a question, and press 7 on the keypad on your phone if you wouldn't mind, so we can get your email address so we can send you email updates from time to time. Last time. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to be on for the next hour. If you have a question, please press 0 on the keypad on your phone. Press 7 on the keypad on your phone if you want to provide us with an email address so we can send you an email update. We've got special guests on. We've got a couple polling questions, and we have the council member on right now. Please introduce yourself, sir, and take it away.
Great, thank you. Well, hello, everybody. This is Councilmember Bob Blumenfield. I represent you in Reseda, Winnetka, Canoga Park, Tarzana, Woodland Hills, and welcome to my first telephone town hall that's focused on COVID-19. First one focused specifically on COVID-19 in the West San Fernando Valley. Now, through the past few weeks, COVID-19, also known as coronavirus, has turned all of our lives upside down. And I want to make sure that you have as much accurate information about what's happening across our city. But more specifically, I want you to know what's happening here in the West Valley. And that's why I've put together this call to connect you to some local experts who can address the two biggest topic areas that people want to know about, our physical health and our financial health. So tonight we're going to be joined by Dr. Eric Snyder, who is the Medical Director of Emergency Services at Providence Cedars-Sinai Tarzana Medical Center, who's going to offer updates from the front lines of the COVID-19 battle, and he's going to share some insights about how to stay safe. And Catherine Groom, she is the director, and later on we're going to hear from her, and she is an MBA. She's the director of the Small Business Development Center at the College of Canyons. She's going to discuss what resources are available to struggling local businesses, as well as the folks who are recently unemployed due to the impacts of the virus. Now, after our guests introduce themselves and share some information, we're going to be going to callers for live questions. So press 0 now or at any time if you have a question to ask. If we run out of time and we don't get to your question, please send your questions to me at councilmember.blumenfield@lacity.org, BLUMENFIELD @lacity.org, and I will work with our guests to answer those questions and put them on my website. If your questions are about topics that are outside of the scope of their expertise, I'm going to do my best to find answers and post them on my website next week. So first off, and real quick, I want to give you a little background, let you know what I'm doing, what the mayor and city council have been working on to help get us through this emergency. First and foremost, I want to assure everybody that we are keeping your critical city services fully functioning. Police, fire, garbage collection, street repair, water, power, etc. will remain and have remained and will remain uninterrupted thanks to dedicated city employees who are working out there to make it happen. Locally, my Emergency Preparedness Community Action Team, or what we call colloquially known as Bobcat, we've activated them and they're distributing food and supplies to local nonprofits. Recently, we gave food and supplies to the West Valley Food Pantry for homeless Angelinos, for One Generation, who are providing seniors an ability to shelter in place by delivering meals, to the Guadalupe Center. They're providing economically vulnerable kids and families food and basic supplies, Haven Hills for survivors of domestic violence. This community action team is a group I started 10 years ago to help make sure that our community would be prepared for a disaster. These dedicated volunteers that make up this team have spent years forward deploying food and supplies in pods and warehouses which we rent throughout the year and barter to keep the supplies fresh. And like during the fires of last year and during other crises, when the crises come, we empty the warehouses to fill supply gaps. In addition to the nonprofits I mentioned, we were able to take supplies like medical supplies and masks to the Jewish Home for the Aging, to various nursing homes, to Providence Tarzana, to Kaiser, to make sure that we filled in the gap before they got their supplies. Citywide, besides the stay-at-home order, the city's actively fighting against the virus in so many different ways. We've stood up more than 42 recreation centers. Of our basic recreation centers have been transformed temporarily into homeless shelters, as well as numerous hotels and motels, including several in my district, have been leased to make sure that homeless people have a place where they can actually shelter in place, be monitored for symptoms, and sent to the hospital if need be. Another big issue is testing sites. It's been painfully slow to get them up and running, but finally we're able to say that we can accommodate anyone who's showing symptoms. As of today, there are 30 sites in the city with the capacity to test more than 10,000 people a day. Their drive-through sites are available, but it's not like McDonald's. These drive-through sites are by appointment only. But the way you can get an appointment, if you're showing any sort of symptoms, you go to coronavirus.lacity.org/testing. You can learn more, and you can actually schedule your appointment right from there to get to a testing site. Now, in addition to the programs you're going to hear from our guest, Catherine Grooms, to help with the economic crisis, I want you to know about a couple of very local things. I've rejiggered my office budget to free up $100,000 to give to local nonprofits. We've already given to 4 at $10,000 each, where we have a site set up. You go to my website, you can apply, and we're hoping to also solicit other donations from private and public sector to give to these groups as well. As you may know, the city expanded the sick leave policy, so employees will have an incentive to stay home if not feeling well. We also passed an eviction moratorium that allows people that are impacted by the virus, whether they lost work or became sick, that they can defer their rent if they need to. And individuals will have 12 months after the pandemic to pay back the rent, or businesses who are in that situation will have 3 months to pay back the rent. And also, you should know LADWP will not shut off power during the pandemic. And the big program, economic programs, Catherine is going to go over later and talk to you about how you can tap into these millions of dollars that the city has put aside for local businesses. The millions the city has, but more importantly, how you tap into the billions that are available federally. Now, let's get started. What you've come for to hear the experts. First, I want to introduce our medical expert, Dr. Eric Snyder. Dr. Snyder serves as the medical director of emergency services at Providence Cedar-Sinai Tarzana Medical Center. He also practices at UCLA Medical Center and other hospitals throughout the city. Now, Dr. Snyder has been working on the front lines of this virus. He was there when Providence admitted some of the region's very first coronavirus patients in early March. And he's a Valley native. He lives locally in Encino, and when he isn't with patients, he could be found coaching baseball at Encino Little League or basketball at Balboa Park. Dr. Snyder, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm going to ask you to let us know what you and your colleagues have been seeing, how you've been holding up, and also I want to get you started with a question about antibodies. You know, we asked people before this call to send in questions, and we had a strikingly large number of people, about 25% of the questions, all had to do with this antibody testing. People want to know if they've had the coronavirus, and whether these tests will eventually be available, whether they work. We've heard things that these tests are not very accurate, and how that whole process would work. So, Dr. Snyder, I'd like to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit more and to answer that question before we start taking questions from the public. Welcome.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and let me say hi to my fellow residents of the West Valley. I want to send a great deal of thanks, first of all, to John Poppich, the Deputy Chief of Staff of Bob. We coached together in Senior Little League, and I've known him for some years, and Bob in particular for reaching out to Providence. I was there the first time he reached out to us at the beginning of this outbreak, offering full support and asking us what we needed. And so I appreciate that it allows us to have the opportunity to care for our community. So it's a really good question. So the antibody test recently was allowed by the FDA. Let me reiterate, it was allowed, but it has not been FDA cleared in the sense that it has not been validated and tested. There are a number of these tests out there, and it's very difficult to ascertain what the how to properly use this in our general population. There is a very good test that's done by blood, where they actually draw your blood and send it, but that's not quite available to the public. So at this time, I wouldn't go out and spend any money getting the antibody test until we have more information on it. It just isn't worth it at this time because we won't really know what to do with the answers of those tests. Next question.
Oh, okay. You want to take some? I
can
take
I'm
some,
sorry.
Go ahead.
So let me also, sorry, what else I've been seeing, I start with the answer to the question, and I forgot that what we're still seeing on the front lines is we are still seeing COVID patients, although we have sort of seen a steady state of them. We were the first person in and around Los Angeles to have reported a COVID patient, and we've been dealing with this for several months now. You know, one of the things that breaks my heart, and one of the reasons I really wanted to be on this call today was to let the community know that Providence Cedars-Sinai remains committed to your safety and health in more ways than just COVID. We've seen an increasing number of patients come in where it's been too late, that they've let their medical illness carry on for too long, and it's gotten to the point where we could not either save people or prevent them from significant injury. You really need to pay attention to your body. If you have ongoing chest pain, abdominal pain, weakness, you really should reach out to your primary care physician or come to the emergency department. We have processes and procedures in place to ensure your safety from COVID patients. All healthcare workers, visitors, and patients are masked. We identify people with early temperature checks before even coming into the hospital. We have specific areas for patients that may have COVID virus. But again, I'm speaking to my community now, and I speak to where my parents live and my friends live. I really don't want to see this ongoing, this uptick in people waiting too long because they're afraid to come in. Again, we remain committed to your safety and your care, and that's what we're there for. That's what we train for, and that's why we're there 24/7, 365 days a year. Please don't wait too long. If you have a concern, reach out to your doctor or come see us. We will ensure your safety.
Thank you, sir. I think we're ready for questions, aren't we, Council Member?
Yes, please. Let's
bring Jill up. Jill, welcome to the call. Jill, go ahead with your question, please.
Hello. Is there any randomized testing in the general population that includes asymptomatic people as well as symptomatic people to judge the prevalence of the virus in the general population?
So let me make sure I understand that question. There's two types of testing. There's the antibody testing to see if someone has been infected before, and then there's the COVID virus active testing. And so I will address both of those. The answer to that question right now is there is no general testing going on at this time. There is limited testing being performed by certain research institutions to get samples of the population for who has the antibodies, which sort of indicates who has been infected with the virus and who may be potentially immune. But at this time, the tests are not, we don't have enough of them to perform general testing for the population. At some point that may occur, but at this time it's not.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to do our first survey question if we can. It's a little bit of a long one here. I'll give you a chance to press 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the keypad on your phone. Here goes. Which issue is the most important for the city of LA to focus its limited resources on during this pandemic? Press 1 if it's keeping essential services functioning like police, fire, street repair, water, power. Press 2 if it's focusing on the COVID-19 testing and support healthcare efforts. Or press 3, providing financial assistance to impacted renters, workers, and business owners, or press 4, sheltering homelessness, assisting food banks, making sure the most vulnerable aren't left behind. The 4 possible answers are: press 1, keeping essential service functioning like police, fire, street repair, water power. Or press 2, focusing on COVID-19 testing and supporting healthcare efforts. Or press 3, providing financial assistance to impacted renters, workers, and business owners. Or press 4, sheltering homelessness, assisting food banks, and making sure that the most vulnerable are not left behind. We appreciate your voting. We'll provide results soon. Let's take another question if we can right away, though. Oh, we are trying to build up the email list. Another button to press is 7 on the keypad on your phone if you want to provide us your email address for email updates. Anna's next. Anna, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Anna, go ahead with your question if you would, please.
Oh, I was the first one that gave you the question. It was about the antibody test and.
Anna, what's your question? Just tell us what you have in mind.
Okay, one thing. If you have a test and it shows that you are a carrier, how long a period of time are you a carrier? How many days, months, or whatever?
So I think the question is, if you test to see if you're harboring the COVID virus, that test can remain positive for almost a month. And so technically you could be carrying it for up to a month. Now, what we recommend is 2 weeks from the onset of symptoms is what time you can socially stop quarantining. But studies have shown 20 to 30 days after being diagnosed with the COVID virus, you can still test positive, although it's unclear if you can still be contagious for up to that time. I hope that's not too confusing.
No, I think that was great. Which issue is the most important for the city of LA to focus its limited resources on during the pandemic? And so at 35% was focusing on COVID-19 testing and supporting healthcare efforts. Just behind it was keeping essential services functioning like police, fire, street repair, water, power. And then at 23%, providing financial assistance to impacted renters, workers, and business owners. And trailing at 9% was sheltering homeless, assisting food banks, etc. So leading the pack was focusing on COVID-19 testing and supporting healthcare efforts. Bob, what are your thoughts on those results, please?
Well, it makes sense to me, and testing was one of those things that has been too slow in the standing up. So I understand why there's a strong desire to get it done. And if we're ever going to get past this, we need to know, who's got it and who had it, so that we can get back to life the way we knew it. So I get that and appreciate that, and I also understand why it would be people would want to make sure the city services are functioning, because that's our lifeline.
So I'm going to read B's question from West Hills. When in neighborhood walking around, there are people riding bikes or running or having kids and none have masks. Understands the virus goes further when breathing heavily. Should they be wearing masks? If so, how will you get this message out? This is from B in West Hills. Doctor?
So that's a really good question. It's a pretty low risk when people are outside bike riding or exercising. And hopefully they are staying 6 feet away from other people, and I think that will be safe enough. And unless they're actively coughing or sneezing, again, that parameter should be just fine. Would I prefer them to wear a mask? I would. But I'm not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned about confined spaces like gatherings in grocery stores, businesses, etc., which is why I applaud the effort to ensure everybody wears a mask inside businesses and alike.
And our next question is popping around here is Deborah. Deborah, welcome to our call. Deborah, go ahead with your question if you would, please.
Yes, I'm wondering if you could talk about the herd immunity. And I know that they talked about it in San Francisco and I think Los Angeles. And how are they tracking the data on that or testing? I don't know if they're testing.
Sure. So that's a really good question. Let me take a step back and ensure everybody understands what herd immunity is. So what herd immunity is something that's happened, for example, with smallpox, something that nobody's ever heard of. smallpox was eradicated from the community after isolation, and people were vaccinated, and the virus sort of went away. What happens if you think of a herd of cows, for example, if all of the cows except one have been infected with coronavirus, that last cow could not receive coronavirus from that herd because it's protected, because everybody around that one cow has already had the antibodies and will not be carriers. And so when we're looking at herd immunity for COVID-19, we're looking at a pretty large proportion of the population, say 60 to 70% of the population, having been infected or vaccinated against this disease, so they cannot carry nor infect other people. And the question is, can it happen? Well, it certainly can happen both by if large enough people get infected and then recover, or when a vaccine is developed, then the people that are either too sick to get a vaccine or for whatever reason can't receive a vaccine, they will be protected from the people around them. So I hope that answers your question. As opposed to surveillance, again, we don't have surveillance yet because the testing is limited at this time to special high needs populations, but I do anticipate that there will be generalized testing for symptomatic and asymptomatic people available in the near future.
Another question comes from Karen. Karen, welcome to the call. Karen, go ahead with your question, if you would, please.
Thank you so much for having this town hall. I appreciate it. My question is to the councilmen as well as the people involved with the hospital. There's been petitions going around for the governor to make sure that pregnant women can have their support person, whether it be a husband or a significant other, present during the time of birth. I want to ask if you guys will commit to contacting the governor to make sure that this can happen. My daughter is facing delivery within a week or two. She happens to be in San Diego. I'm in Tarzana. She is scared, along with all the other women in this situation. They need to have their support persons with them. My daughter also suffers from anxiety, and she also...
Let's see what we can do about this, Karen. Go ahead, doctor.
So I'm sorry to hear about that. If she would like to come to Tarzana, I could help. But I think that's a really good point. You know, we have to balance the risks of the visitor as well as the patient and the patient's surrounding, as well as the newborns. And so while we certainly don't want the visitor to get infected with COVID, also, as importantly, we don't want a visitor to come in and potentially infect pregnant mothers giving birth or newborn babies. Every hospital is going to set its own policy. This is not a governmental policy. But again, I think the most effective approach would be to reach out directly to the people in charge, whether it's the CEO of the hospital, and either call them or write them a letter expressing your concerns and asking for a clarification on the policy. You know, again, at Providence, Tarzana, Providence Cedars-Sinai now, we do allow a visitor, the father or the wife of the mother, to come in during the child's birth, but that's the exception to the rule, and I can't speak for other hospitals.
Thank you for that. Let's take Stanley next if we can. Stanley, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, if you would, please.
Yeah. I've been noticing on TV where they show all these cars lined up to take the tests, and of all the locations they keep showing, there's nothing that seems to be showing out here in the San Fernando Valley or the West Valley. I was wondering, is there a place out here that you can make arrangements to and drive up and take a test, or do you have to travel over to the East Valley or the East Side of LA, or where to get these tests taken?
I can answer that one. There are test sites. There are several of them, and you get to assign the test site when you sign up for the test. So the way to get it is you go to the coronavirus page, or go to coronavirus.lacity.org/testing, and they will give you the site to go to. And as I'm not supposed to just say the site, even though it's kind of an open secret, but we don't want people just driving to the site. We want to make sure everybody makes an appointment, which is why they're not saying the sites, wanting me to name all the sites. But the answer to your question is, at this point in time, there are sites all around the city, including the West San Fernando Valley.
Thank you, sir. Time for two more questions before Bob introduces our second guest. Joey's next. Joey, welcome to our call. Joey, go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, hi. I passed by on Canoga Avenue and where there was a testing site, and they told me I had to register. So I went on the site to register, and one of the conditions is that if you're over 65 years old, that you're at risk and you're entitled to get tested. But the first question is, are you coughing? And I'm not. And I answered no, so it says, oh, you don't qualify. So, my thought is, I'm over 65, I'm 77 years old, and I might have the virus, and why should I have to wait till I have a cough in order to determine whether or not I have the virus because I'm at risk?
When did you go for that? Because they've liberalized it. It was
yesterday.
Each day they keep liberalizing the test because they, as they stand up more and more sites, they try to liberalize it. I don't know if the doctor has an answer for that, but I agree with you that. Go ahead.
So this is a difficult concept to understand, and let me try to make it a little bit easier to understand. And so I certainly appreciate the anxiety associated with being infected with COVID. And as we get older and we have comorbidities such as heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, et cetera, you're more at risk, not for contracting the illness, but for having a bad outcome with the illness. And so if you're over the age of 65, that's sort of a cutoff where we see higher incidences of people getting more sick from the virus. But that doesn't increase your likelihood of getting the virus. Now, let's say you get tested and you're 77 with diabetes or heart disease. The test itself will only tell you if you have the virus, but it's not going to, there really isn't any treatment for an asymptomatic person with COVID. So let's say you test positive, it won't change anything that you do. And let's say you test negative, the test may be wrong. And so there really isn't the reason they say that you're not a candidate to be testing is because you don't have any symptoms. Now, if you have symptoms and you get tested positive, again, there is no treatment for this disease. It's all supportive. And so even if you came to my emergency department, we may not test you even if you're 95 years old with diabetes if you don't have any symptoms, because we would send you home regardless without, again, because there is no treatment necessarily for the virus specifically. I hope that makes sense.
All right, let's take Carrie next if we can. Carrie, welcome to our call. Carrie, go ahead with your question if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you for the chance to ask a question, and I really appreciate everyone else's questions as well. I'm curious about how the surge is manifesting within LA and within the West Valley. We've all seen and watched the news about how it's playing out in New York, and I'm curious about whether or not there's enough PPE, whether there's enough medical staffing. Are the hospitals facing the same kind of overwhelm that we saw in New York? What is the surge? Is it happening now in LA? What does it look like here? Thanks.
So that's a really good question. A lot of what you see on the news is specifically addressing the surges that we see in highly dense populated areas such as New York City, Detroit, Seattle. We haven't seen quite the surge yet in the San Fernando Valley. The San Fernando Valley, I feel, is sort of our own world. I'm proud to call myself a Valley resident. I think that we've done a better job. Again, I'll express my bias here because I'm your neighbor. I think we've done a better job with social distancing and hygiene, and we have really done a good job maintaining our COVID virus infections at a low point. And so we are fully prepared for any type of uptick in virus activity. However, we haven't seen it yet, and I work for a company that staffs 28 different emergency departments in and around the valley, and some have a little bit more than others, but nobody's at the breaking point at this time. And again, and a lot of that, to go back to the PPE, is because of the support not only from our community but specifically from the councilman's office. So without that support, we could be doing far worse.
Council member, you have a special guest to introduce.
Great, thank you. Doctor, thank you for all your comments, and if you can stick around, we may have questions at the end for both of you. But our next guest, we want to make sure we're dealing with the physical health, but we also deal with the financial health. Our next guest is Catherine Grooms. She leads and manages the Small Business Development Center hosted by the College of the Canyons, and that's a team of 25 people, including professional business advisors providing services to clients in the San Fernando Valley, in Santa Clarita Valley, and in the Antelope Valley. She works with thousands of small business owners and entrepreneurs. Her broad experience prior to joining the SBDC was working with companies both small and large on the East Coast, the Midwest, and in California in a variety of industries. And basically, she helps clients positively impact local economies. And she's been studying the various tools that are out there to help people and to help businesses. So, Catherine, thanks for being here. It's a secret that so many different lives have been upended over the past few weeks. And we know that many different levels of government have been working on different forms of financial aid. And I'm hoping you could start off by sharing a little bit about what you know is available and who it's available to and where people can access those funds.
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to participate, Bob. I'm so happy to be here to share the resources. So how about if I let's start with people that have recently lost their jobs. If you haven't already reached out to the EDD website for the different options that are available through the state of California, absolutely do that. We know that there is a lag with the availability of the federal unemployment, but that will also go through the EDD site when it is ready. So I'm hopeful about that, logistically happening sooner rather than later. I'm also going to suggest that those individuals who do not have businesses, if you have not already looked at and reviewed your personal expenses, if you have a car payment or other bills like that, I'm suggesting that you reach out to those companies, go to their website and see if they have relief options that are available. You want to make sure that you have an opportunity to manage your cash flow in this time, because I can't think of anybody that's not being impacted by the coronavirus. So if you're able to help manage your personal cash flow, it'll help relieve some of the stress and pressure that I think everybody is starting to feel. Something else to keep in mind is that for the businesses that are classified as essential, many of them that I'm talking to, that my team is talking to, need to hire. So if you're in a position where you can continue to work and you're not able to continue working for your current employer, maybe there's an opportunity to be hired by another business. For business owners, I would like to just let you know about we have loans available through the City of LA for business owners ranging from $5,000 to $20,000, and that's small businesses that are being impacted by the coronavirus. We have the SBA disaster loan, and you can access that through sba.gov, and there's a link you can click on, and the purpose of the SBA disaster loan, also called EIDL or EIDL, is to help businesses remain sustainable as they are being impacted by the coronavirus. It's an online application process. The SBA is the direct lender. They are able to get back to you with a decision in about 14 calendar days. There is an option for employees, so employees that you have on board or that you had on board as of January 31st, 2020, there is an advance that is part of the SBA disaster loan at $1,000 per employee as of January 31st, and that advance amount does not need to be repaid. It's a maximum of up to 10 employees, and that is part of the SBA disaster loan or EIDL. For the loan amount, you're not requesting an amount. It's based upon the financial information that you're providing for your business for the 12-month period before your business was actually impacted by the coronavirus. So again, it's the SBA trying to reach as many businesses as they can. It's sustainability, or to help sustainability of the business. Turnaround time is about 14 calendar days. The loan is actually repayable over 30 years. There is a 3.75% interest rate, no prepayment penalty, and the first payment is due in a year. So that's an option for all business types and for nonprofits to consider. And again, just go to sba.gov, disaster relief. There's a button that you can click on. Another option is the Paycheck Protection Program, and that is actually through the lender that you work with where your business bank resides. So what you're going to do for that one, if you have not yet applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, it's geared to help keep employees fully employed as businesses are being impacted by the coronavirus. For that, what you can do is just on your device, type in the name of your business bank, also type in Paycheck Protection Program. A unique URL should come up, and this can be multiple employees, it can be full-time equivalent employees, it can be a single employee, meaning you are the only employee of that business. Not all banks are able to help you with the Paycheck Protection Program. Just in case you find out that your bank is not an approved SBA lender, there are other SBA lenders that can assist you. So don't worry about that. It's still an option. And if for some reason you don't qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program, there are also other options. There's a delay of payroll-related taxes for employers. So you can go to irs.gov for that one. There is an employee retention tax credit. And those last two items that I talked about, you can check into those if you are not receiving an approval on the Paycheck Protection Program or you're not interested in applying for that one. Those are financial items for you to think about. There is also the 6-month loan payment forgiveness for SBA loans. So that's also part of the CARES Act. And I just want you to be aware of the website for my team. There's no cost to work with us. We are absolutely working with clients on disaster assistance and other related areas. And our website is www.cocsbdc.org. That's www.cocsbdc.org. So it's not financial assistance, but we can help you navigate through disaster assistance options for your business and to help position your business for survival, sustainability, and beyond COVID-19.
Thank you for that. Let's take Susan up first for a question. Susan from Woodland Hills. Susan, welcome to our call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi. My question really isn't related to small business loans. I'm a self-employed photographer. I'm my only employee, just me. I understood from listening to Brad Sherman's town hall last week that self-employed people could apply through the EDD for unemployment insurance benefits. So I did, and I was supposed to put in myself as my employer, so I did, and I received back the 00. Then yesterday I listened to Henry Stern, and he had someone on who said, no, self-employed and independent contractors do not qualify for unemployment insurance at this time, and only the PUA. So I'm getting really frustrated, and my stimulus check information today, mine, my husband, and my son's, all came back as payment status not available, cannot determine your eligibility at this time. So I'm getting really nervous. And
Any thoughts on what Susan's going through, please?
So, Susan, for the self-employed, I would say that that's where the federal unemployment eligibility would apply, and that's where I mentioned the fact that that has not been rolled out yet.
Gotcha.
There's a delay with that.
It's important to note you're saying it's not rolled out yet, but from what I'm hearing, and I want you to confirm, it is going to be rolled out. So folks in that situation who are sole proprietors, et cetera, will be able to apply. I hear it's on April 28th. They're going to be able to do it. But you may know better.
So, again, I mean, I'm hoping that it's sooner rather than later, but the tentative date, I mean, they're going to do all that they can to get that rolled out. The problem is that it's for the whole nation. So logistically, I think they're running into some challenges rolling it out, but that would apply under the federal unemployment. And that's why at the state level, they're saying that you're not eligible right now.
And I guess,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Governor Newsom announced today, it was just literally right before this call, he said that self-employed can apply on April 28th and that they're going to hear back on the 30th, and that there's a 21-day turnaround, but it's retroactive. That's what the governor announced today, and we'll have to see how that plays out.
Perfect timing.
So Becky's question, she wants us to read hers. What help will be available for people who are disabled and who have adult disabled children? We're living on my Social Security, and we're struggling very badly because I have less coming in now than I have going out. What do you think about Becky's thought there, please?
I am not familiar with that particular scenario. For the disability, so that's at the federal level, or is it at the state level?
I don't know, but I don't know.
Becky, I'm so sorry. I'm not familiar with the impact of the disability payments.
That's okay. Jesse,
I should just say, all questions, if you want to send a question to me at councilmember.blumenfield@lacity.org, for folks whose questions we didn't get to, and for folks like Becky, we will try to research an answer and respond and post an answer online. So for those kinds of things, please send us an email and we will get you a response.
And I just want to remind you, everybody, one last time, if you want to provide us your email address, please press 77 on the keypad on your phone so we can send you updates from time to time. 7 on the keypad on your phone. Howard's next. Howard, welcome to the call. Howard, go ahead with your question, please.
Hi. I'm a senior who works for a grocery chain, and I was put on temporary leave of absence. I don't know how long that will last. Can I apply for unemployment insurance?
So temporary leave, which means are you still being compensated by your employer while you're on the temporary leave?
Another week.
Okay, so you'll be compensated.
Go ahead.
So you'll be compensated by your employer for an additional week, right?
Go on.
And then at that point, I would wait for instructions from the employer to see if you need to apply then, because you won't have any insight as to what's going on operationally at the business, and they may have some other remedies to offer.
Gotcha. Let's take another question if we can. This one might be for the doctor. John's question. Let me bring John up. John, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. John, go ahead with your question, please.
Speak. Yes. This is a medical question. I wonder about the hydroxychloroquine. I've known people that have taken it, and I've taken it. It hasn't bothered me at all, and I know some doctors that are taking it to use it as a preventative. What do you think?
So that's a really good question. This medication has been all over the news, but with regard to its safety profile, it isn't to be used like an over-the-counter medication. It does have some effects that can disturb your heart and the way the rhythm is conducted in your heart. That could certainly cause some significant problems if not monitored closely. I don't think there's a value in taking it preemptively, but there may be some value in treating the more severe cases as inpatients. At Tarzana, we limit the medication because of its side effects as well as its safety profile to those patients that are only being admitted to the hospital. Patients being discharged do not receive the medication.
Thank you for that. Let's take Evelyn next. Evelyn, welcome to the call. Evelyn, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much for the call. This is a question for Dr. Snyder. Dr. Snyder, I've had all COVID-19 symptoms, and doctors who I've consulted with believe I have it too. But by the time I was tested, my test was negative. I continue to still have symptoms like the shortness of breath, I lose my voice, my chest hurts. I'm on week 4. What should people like me who test negative but show symptoms do? Do we retest? Do we wait until the antibodies to find out whether we built immunity? I'm afraid to go to the hospital because I...
Okay. Let's see if the doctor can answer your question. Go ahead, please.
Sure. So thanks for that question. And so one of the things that we still see a lot of people focusing on is that, yes, there's the COVID virus around, but there's still a million other viruses that can cause symptoms very similar to it. And so if you tested negative, there's a likelihood that you have one of the other typical viruses that can last weeks upon weeks. Having symptoms for 4 weeks makes it less likely that it's COVID, especially in the setting of a negative COVID test. But if you certainly are having ongoing symptoms and you're having trouble breathing or chest discomfort, I think that's something you should certainly reach out to your primary care physician or come to the ED to be evaluated for.
Thank you for that. Let's take Jonathan next. Jonathan, welcome to the call. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
I'm not quite sure if it's a business or medical question in some ways, but as far as social distancing, is there any indication at some point when we've been isolated enough without symptoms that some groups of people can start to basically commingle again, particularly like family or grandparents to kids? I know that there's the concern about carrier in the kids, but if there are any other markers to indicate, why my son can't hug his grandma, it's kind of concerning. And it even gets to the business side, because at some point there's a lack of consistency of how stores implement the social distancing and enforce the social distancing. And if there's any reevaluation of how businesses are going to approach this, because in the grocery stores, not everyone's really paying attention to their 6-foot rule, but and I know there's some self-assertiveness there, but still, it's an uncomfortable situation. I'm not sure.
Your thoughts, please.
I'm sorry, is that question for me or for the business?
Catherine, are you still here? I don't know. I don't see you
I
on
am.
the board. Oh, you circled
Yeah.
back. Okay, I see it. Do you want to answer some of that first, please?
I mean, I would say that it's more the medical side of the social distancing. And I mean, it does come into play from businesses that continue to operate because you have operational processes where you have to implement the social distancing if you're an essential business, and you have to take as many of the precautions as you can. But there is always that possibility that someone is lax for a moment, and then you don't know what type of social interaction they have beyond the workplace. So I don't know what the solution is for that. Dr. Snyder, do you have some suggestions?
No, and I feel the pain that you're expressing. My parents live right down the street from me, and my kids, their grandkids can't see them, and they do a lot of Zooming with them, and I would do anything to allow them to see each other. but I'm more concerned about my kids being carriers with maybe even no symptoms and potentially giving it to my parents who are in their 70s. And so it's for their health and safety that I keep my kids from going over there. The question is, at some point, we will have to obviously start social interaction and restart the economy and businesses. But we need more information before that happens. We need to see how many people have been infected, what the carrier rate is for antibodies, et cetera. But the worst thing that could happen is that we stop social isolation too early, and then we end up, putting a lot of people on ventilators and in hospitals that otherwise would have been fine.
Another question comes from Alan. Alan, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Alan, go ahead with your question, please. Alan, you're up. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm up?
You are.
Thank you. I'm wondering why, since we've have, SARS, MARS, CARS, whatever, and coronaviruses in the umpteens, that this is not something we can handle. It's more like, how do we know what to do with this one?
Doctor?
So it's not that it's something we can't handle, but what we want to prevent is an overall outbreak and a large influx of patients into an overburdened hospital. And that's what flattening the curve means. Unlike SARS and MERS and, for example, Ebola, those viruses are significantly easier to contain because the viruses, in a sort of strange way, are not very good viruses because they're very lethal. And so that makes them very difficult to spread and become pandemics because they kill their host. They kill the patient that they're in, and then they can't spread. A good virus, like the current COVID, is one that will infect a lot of people, create lasting symptoms, but it doesn't necessarily kill the large majority that it infects. And so it will spread rapidly because it's difficult to diagnose, right? When somebody comes in with the flu, it's pretty easy to see. They have high temperatures, they're shaking, et cetera. However, COVID, you can have a whole spectrum of illness, which makes it very difficult to contain.
We've got about 7 minutes left on this call. And in 7 minutes, if you didn't get your question in, or whether you press 0 or not, you can leave us a message at the end if you want us to get back to you. We need your, if you want us to get back to you, we have to have that contact information, like your name, email address, phone number, etc. So if you wouldn't mind, stay to the end of the call and leave us that information. Now, council member, if you wouldn't mind, please ask our two guests for some final comment, a couple minutes each, and then you bring us to the finish line if you wouldn't mind, please.
Great. Well, no, I again, so appreciate the guests here, and I certainly want to say to everybody who's still on the call, and I know we've had thousands of people on this call, there's obviously a lot of interest in this. Go to my website as well. We're going to be answering questions there, and both of our guests have agreed to help answer those questions after the fact, either with a written, frequently asked questions kind of thing, or we may do some videos as well to answer those questions so that people can have access to it. And again, appreciate both of you being here, and I guess I would like to give you each a minute or two to close and say whatever final comments that you wish. We can start with the doctor.
Again, thank you for putting this on. I appreciate the opportunity to educate the community in what we're dealing with, and again, thank you for the support. Again, the biggest message I want to give to everybody is keep your social distancing. It's working. Number one. Number two, please don't medically distance yourself. If you or your loved ones or your parents or your grandparents need care, if they're having chest pain, difficulty breathing, weakness, please have them seek care. We will protect them. We've been protecting people from others that are infected. We have dedicated areas in the hospital, but please do not medically isolate yourself.
And Ms. Grooms.
Okay. I'd like to just, I guess, kind of keep it positive for businesses and to reassure you that there are resources out here to assist. There's high demand right now just because there's such a large impact going on. But there are resources, absolutely. We'll be able to work towards getting through the impact of the coronavirus. Sustainability, as part of that, when we are beyond the survival mode, I'm hoping that it's a great opportunity for businesses to move forward, to integrate some of what we've been working on in this time period, and to hopefully spark some innovation. So thank you, Bob, for allowing me to participate.
Council member, this is Kurt. I had to jump in. I forgot to offer the input on the second poll we had, so here it goes. What are the preferred ways you would like to stay in touch with the council member and learn about COVID-19 related updates? Press 1 for email, press 2 for text messaging, press 3 for another telephone town hall, or press 4 for social media. How do you want to keep in touch concerning this matter? Email, press 1, text messaging, press 2, another telephone town hall, press 3, social media, press 4. Bob, bring us to the finish line, please. I'm sorry, I had to jump in on that.
No, I appreciate that. It's good to get the feedback from everyone who's here, so we know the best ways to get in touch with folks. And again, I want to emphasize that we've got, we're continuing to update my website at Blumenfield.lacity.org, because we're getting all the information that we can. I want to again thank the guests, and it's so important that we on the financial side that we help individuals and businesses. You think about just the business side alone. There's a $350 billion package. If we can help our businesses get just 0.5% more of that money, that's more than $1 billion coming to Los Angeles. It's one of the reasons I put a motion together at City Hall to make sure that we provide the services to help people walk people through that process and basically try to do as much of a concierge service as we can and work with all of the local development centers, Catherine's and others, so that they have the resources to help people because it's not only helping them, it's helping the region.